I'm here today with Nicky of Nekrogoblikon to talk about the latest record, The Fundamental Slimes and Humours, out April 1st on District Lines. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah. Not bad. Just hanging, kind of getting ready for this upcoming tour, and just hanging out, enjoying my time at home before I'm out on the road.
Where did the name for this album come from? Because for the life of me, I tried to understand exactly what you guys are trying to say with this title record. And it's like, okay, The Fundamental Slimes, I think I get that. But the whole combination, where did the inspiration come from?
The inspiration actually came from, one second, I got it here. The inspiration came from like back in the old school medieval doctors, and they believed like the body and health was like a balance of the four humors in the body, which they believe to be these like mysterious fluids and whatnot. So it kind of ties in with this cover sort of looking like an old medical chart. And it's also just a pun because it's sort of humorous music, you know? So it was kind of just like a joke that came into my head, and we're like, okay, that's the title, you know? So, but The Fundamental Slimes and Humours. It's like if the body's filled with all these various slimes and humors that you can see and hear, you know?
Yeah, it would look something like that.
And, so that's where the idea came from, and we just thought it had a good sound to it.
It definitely sounds like Nekrogoblikon. I'll give you that much.
Yeah, fair enough.
How is the creative process for the band in terms of the evolution from the first record all the way until now? Do you see an evolution in it? Or do you guys are still very traditional to how things started when it comes to the creative process?
It's definitely different. When it first started, it was just my friend Tim and I in his garage back in 2006 in the summer, and we were just making joke songs for MySpace using his. He had a bunch of old riffs. He was in a different band at the time, and so he was like, "I want to take all these riffs I haven't used for anything and make an album called Goblin Island." You know, we were talking on Instant Messenger, you know, and I was like, that's fucking hilarious, dude. Let's do it. So we wrote a whole album of songs about goblins. Then after that, we did Stench, which was like way more serious because he had gone back to school and actually formed a live band at that point, as opposed to it just being the two of us. So we made that record. It took us like 4 years, and it was more serious, but still all about goblins. And Tim quit the band not too long after that. And we tried a few other things, like for heavy meta, we had everyone write a couple songs. And then for Bonkers and Slimes, I just helmed most of the writing myself. So it's definitely changed a lot over time. To where it is now, and I think we're all stoked on it. It's nice just kind of having a singular voice writing stuff a lot of the time, though I can say I miss having other people write stuff sometimes too, because it's easier for me, but
it allows you to relax a little bit,
but I'm not too worried about it because I have fun writing and stuff. Yeah.
What do you feel is the defining element of this record? Is there even one, in your opinion?
I don't know that there is one. I think it's like a variety show. You know, there's a lot of variety in the songs, and I tried to make it sort of, when I was coming into it, I was like, I kind of wanted to make it like 90s, not necessarily in the aesthetic, but in the, I feel like a lot of those 90s big budget records before piracy and everything, they would really go all over the place, and the songs would be kind of more different from each other than they have been in the 2010s and stuff. I think a lot of that's just budget and stuff, you know, but I wanted to make it seem as if we, you know, had that kind of budget, I mean, which we didn't, but, you know, just to be able to write without necessarily constraints like, okay, this has to be metal because we're a metal band or whatever. And it definitely, I'd say that, you know, stuff on here is more accessible to some degree, I think, but still super goblin. So I don't think we were like compromised integrity in that respect. And it's not, you know, it's not all lyrically about goblins, but I think, you know, it's still very goblin in its soul and the theme of it.
Yeah, it still feels and sounds like a Nekrogoblikon record all around.
Right. So I'm happy we hit that goal. And I'm excited. It's finally coming out tonight at midnight. So I guess tomorrow morning at midnight. So I'm pumped, man. It's been like a long time. Yeah.
With every record, maybe there's a little bit of a challenge or something challenging that changes because of the dynamics of the band, because of the growth of the band. When you look at the work that you put into this record, was this a more challenging, less challenging record than the previous?
I think it was more challenging for me, honestly. Part of that is because I wrote Bonkers in like 6 weeks. I was basically on tour, or no, we weren't on tour. I don't even remember. My friend hit me up like, you got to write some new Necro. I'm like, okay. So I wrote one. And then he was like, okay, we're going to the studio in like 6 weeks. I was like, fuck, I better finish all these ideas. Whereas this one started in 2018 and I kept writing throughout till like 2021, basically. So it was just a longer process. And I think that helps with the actual variety of it, because if you write everything in a few weeks, you're going to have more similarities, whereas if you're like, okay, I started this song 2 years ago, but this one I just wrote a few months ago, there's going to be different because of how our brains work, I think.
Having more time, does that also allow you to get a little bit deeper into your head and overthink sometimes the process?
Absolutely. There's definitely it's a mixed bag, you know, because it's like, well, we don't really have a tight deadline, so I can sit there and try out like 87 different structures for songs and stuff like that. But overall, I dug it. You know, I like having a lot of time, but it'd be cool to maybe do one in 2 years instead of 3.5 also. So
you mentioned that this album has a little bit of a vibe of a variety, because the songs are very different from one another, and that's something that every listener is going to realize the moment you start pressing play. Does that make the album a little bit more experimental in your view?
Yeah, in some ways, I would say it's interesting because I wouldn't exactly call it. I mean, it is experimental objectively, I suppose, because it's just the genre blending and whatnot. But I know we go all over the map, I would say, from like, there's no Magic Spider, but there's Bones, which is kind of like an industrial track, you know. And then there's Fancy Wind, which is more like active rock or something, you know. So I think even though they're experimental songs, they're probably catchier, and something, you know, that the girlfriends can enjoy on there too. Yeah, I would say that experimenting and really trying to make every album that we've done different from the others in a lot of ways has been a thing that I'm interested in, and I hope to keep it that way. So I never feel like I'm going to settle into something and just shit music out. I think it's always going to be an endeavor because I want to push the envelope and see what else we can do, you know?
So those EDM influences that I feel like exist on the sound of this record, is this something that you perhaps not going to continue with? It was just something that was right for this album?
It'll probably keep going with that. There's been little shreds of EDM since the very beginning, you know? Because actually I started writing, I was making like techno and trance stuff before I ever learned how to write metal or even got into it. So that just kind of carries over. I don't think that'll go anywhere, but I don't think also we'll go like full EDM or something. I mean, that'd be interesting. But
that would be really interesting. Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Maybe like an EP or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think something that on an EP, maybe it's a little bit easier to digest for the listener, and you guys could go even wilder because the restrictions are far less. You don't have to worry about, you know, fluidity of the record or any of those
right.
things, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And I always have this fantasy of maybe just, I don't know if it's going to happen, but just releasing like a song every couple months instead of a full album. I mean, albums are sweet. And of course we'll do another one, I'm sure, but I also want to see how people would react if it were like, okay, here's just a song, because it's all internet nowadays. And
yeah, it's all about the downloads and the singles and that kind of stuff.
Like pop or dance music, you know, a lot of those dudes aren't really putting out albums, but they'll put out a song. And I'm like, I wonder if that could translate into rock somehow, you know?
I think it would work well because of the current way of people consuming music. I mean, most people consume singles. There's still the hardcore metal fans that want the vinyl, that want the record, listen to it from beginning to end. But I would say the vast majority of fans these days consume singles. So I don't think you would be off the mark.
I feel like it could work, especially if we did like a YouTube thing. Cause yeah, I feel like 90% people are probably listening on YouTube or just looking for a video or something. And then the other 10% are all on Spotify and Apple Music and whatnot. I don't know. It's probably more like, I mean, we have probably all have music subscription services nowadays. But
Do you set goals for yourself outside of the goals that maybe you have for the band coming in into an album? Do you set specific goals for yourself when it's time to write a record?
No, not necessarily. I just write and write and write and then keep the best of what comes out, you know? So I probably started on like 30 plus different tracks in the past 3.5, 4 years or whatever. And then we ended up using like 11 of them. So there's definitely all sorts of ideas. But I don't typically go into it with like a set destination or goal in mind. I kind of just like to write and see what comes out. So yeah.
And when it comes to your vocals, do you work on them? Do you take lessons? Because I love your vocal range. I mean, you're like such a Jacqueline Hyde style vocalist that you just I feel like sometimes I'm listening to 10 different people on a single track. So
Right.
do you prepare, like do you do any sort of specific work to keep the vocals fresh in order to be able to have that kind of a range?
Not really. I kind of just what I do is I'll write the whole demo out at home, including all the guitar parts, but they're MIDI, you know. And then I do the vocals at home too. So and I re-record them again with Jason, our producer in Florida. So my whole preparation process is usually when I'm demoing out songs, I'll figure out what I want to do, and then oh sorry, there's a weird noise outside. And then I'll hear the you know, whatever I want to do, as long as I can actually do it. Like I'd love to be able to sing just like straight power metal, but I don't think that's something I'll achieve. I've always thought about maybe taking vocal lessons, but I just haven't done it. I kind of just get better by trying new things out and seeing what I can do. Like I like recording a lot, you know, so most of my practice comes from just recording various things and trying out new stuff. And then Jason, when he's producing vocals, he'll kick my ass a bit too, you know, so.
Do you have a different regiment when you're on the road? Because the demands are different. You know, you're singing every night.
Totally. And yeah, I'm nervous because I've never done this much cleans mixed in with the growls as this album. So that's definitely going to be a new challenge on the road. But on the road, I pretty much become nocturnal. So I'll wake up like 2 or 3 hours before the show, grab a small bite of food, and then do the show. And then I sleep. I try and sleep like 12 to 14 hours every night if I can, and drink like a gallon of water a day. Basically, that's like my routine. And that's kind of just what I do, and lie in a little bunk or whatever and play phone games, you know, and listen to audiobooks. Cause yeah, I found if I hang out too much or if I wake up early, then the voice will get worn out, you know? So it seems like the only way to party and to keep your voice is just to sleep like 12 hours. Yeah. If you can.
You're mentioning earlier that this album was a record that started the process really early on, like 2018, something like that. What about the lyrical content? Do you wait for the music to kind of inspire you to write songs, to write lyrics for these songs? Or do you have a little bit of a book that you jog on some ideas, some things you see on TV that you think, oh, this is going to be great for a Nekrogoblikon song? How does it work in that mind of yours?
Most of the time I'll start the music, and then it'll change like depending on the songs. I've had ideas that start with lyrics before, like the Magic Spider was an idea. So sometimes it's good for me to come up with a song title and then start writing the song. And then as I kind of get a part down, I'll just lay down some scratch vocals or whatever and write as I go. Because I find that having the vocals there makes it a lot easier to decide like what should come next, you know? Whereas if you're just writing the instrumental, sure, you can do like, okay, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge or whatever. But if you already have the lyrics going, it'll kind of inform the decision-making process. So most of the time I'll just do it like simultaneously, kind of, yeah. There's been exceptions where it's like Powercore, I had that instrumental written like years and years before we recorded it. And it was just called Powercore because that in the MIDI file. And then, so I wrote the lyrics about that title. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Having a goblin in the band and having that creativity that you have when it comes to lyrical content, is there any topic that's off the books as far as you're concerned?
No, I mean, sky's the limit, honestly. What I wouldn't want to do is put out like a political song or something, or make any sort of political statements. We try and keep it like escapism oriented, I guess you could say. So yeah, we wouldn't be writing like a protest song or something. But other than that, I feel like we can just write about whatever. Generally, it just tends to be kind of dark stuff. I mean, it's metal. But sometimes we'll have the happy songs too. I mean, yeah, I don't know. When we do gore stuff, I think it's more like tongue in cheek, it's kind of like Evil Dead or something. I like to think of it as like campy. But we don't take ourselves seriously as a band, and that's pretty liberating. So
that actually is the perfect segue to my next question, which is, I know you guys don't take yourselves seriously as a band, but are you ever concerned that fans won't take the art form that you're creating seriously because of the image that you guys have, or that's not even a concern for you?
Yeah, a little bit of column A, a little column B. It's definitely something that we think about, like, okay, how many people are going to get beyond the surface joke and actually give the music a chance? But at the same time, we're a fucking goblin band, so we signed up for this ourselves. So that's the life we chose, so it's not a big concern. I find, like a lot of people do get it and end up enjoying it. And then of course there's sometimes like metal elitists who are like, no, fuck that. And they won't even give it a chance. I'm like, I bet you if we played you a song and didn't tell you what band it was, you'd like it, but whatever, But honestly, yeah, I feel like if that was a concern of ours, we wouldn't still be in a goblin band.
Well, I'll tell you something. I saw you guys live in 2019 at Heavy Montreal, and you guys were the one band of the day that my son and I marked down that we don't care who's playing at this time. We're not missing these guys' set. So we were at the main stage watching Cataclysm. We watched 3 songs and we booted to the smaller stage where you guys were playing because we're like, we can't miss this. And I'm not gonna lie, we came for the goblin, we stayed for the metal. So,
all right, dude.
So it definitely worked for us. You guys put on a great live show, very entertaining. Same thing with the music videos. Is that a fun part of the creative process of the music that you make, the videos, the live shows, the fun that goes into it?
Yeah, it's definitely fun. The videos and stuff, it's always like a couple days of shooting for like 14, 16-hour days. And we do all this stuff, and it's kind of fun for me. It's like a little taste of what it would be like to work in Hollywood or something, so those days are always interesting and fun. And live shows are a blast, touring can be punishing because so much of the time is spent just traveling and being hungover, in a van somewhere or whatever. But the shows are always really fun. And yeah, I'd say we have fun with it. It's funny that 2019 Heavy Montreal, we were like so late because we got held up at the border crossing.
You also had some technical issues with one of the guitars on stage. I thought you guys were going to throw a guitar off the stage. That's how pissed off you were.
Yeah, those wireless rigs are crap sometimes. I'm like, just use a cable, dude. But yeah, we got there like 15 minutes before the set, and so we pulled up and all these people like, get in the cart, all the little carts they drive around. So we're like speeding up. As soon as we get on stage, it's like, all right, you're playing. It was like, holy shit, you know what I mean? So that was an intense day.
The crowd loved you guys, and even with the technical issues, everybody had a great time. And myself, like, I wasn't able to catch that Summer of Slaughter tour because the Toronto stop was the day before of the Heavy Montreal show, and there was issues, or the day after. I think it's the day after, actually, the day after, because you guys played on the first day of Heavy Montreal. So for me, it was just a blessing that you guys were able to play that show and were able to make it there. So thank you for making all the necessary efforts to play that night.
Oh, you're welcome, man. That was our second time at Heavy Montreal. It's an awesome festival for sure. Yeah.
How hard it is to travel with a goblin?
It can be tough. I'm sure it's not as hard as it is for like Guar and stuff. And we've got like a million goblins, but he's just a fun guy, cracking jokes and you know, being a goblin. And there's like usually 9 of us in a vehicle, so that gets a little tight at times, but that's the life, you know. Yeah, it's more hard for him, you know, than just for us, because he's gotta be in charge of his own stuff. So I think that that can be stressful for the goblin. We've had a couple goblins almost get heat strokes and stuff like that because it gets really hot in there. Yeah,
I could totally see that. I could totally see that. I have one last question for you, and that is, if you are the Chuck D of Nekrogoblikon, is John Goblikon the Flavor Flav? And if so, which one of the two is the better hype man?
John Goblikon, yeah, dude, he's the hype man for sure. I do my best with cracking sarcastic jokes, you know, but he's got the crowd riled up. I love the extra support. Honestly, it's great because I could just sort of hide in the corner if I want, and people are still getting a goblin, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love the energy. Nicky, thank you very much for your time today, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about the record, about the band. All the best for you guys with the release and with the tour.
You too, Pedro, and I hope you get better soon, man.
All right, man. Thank you and take care. All the best.
All right, you too.